If you're ready to learn about the rules for flying drones for fun and recreation, you're in the right place, so welcome. First, if you've never taken a course from me, I'm Dave Hook and I'll be your guide to the latest rules and techniques for flying RC model aircraft and drones for fun and recreation. I've been flying for nearly 40 years and been a flight instructor for over 37 years. I hold a number of different FAA licenses, including Certified Flight Instructor and Remote Pilot with a Small Unmanned Aircraft System rating. All of the licenses aside, what's most important is that I never stop learning about flying. Let's get going so you can get out there and fly. There are 8 rules that drone pilots must follow when we fly for fun. The first rule is that when we fly by this particular set of rules, our flights are strictly for recreational purposes. Okay, so what does this mean? We fly model aircraft as a hobby or recreation. So how do we know if our unmanned aircraft is a model aircraft? First, it's capable of sustained flight. Baseballs and frisbees don't count. Next, the model aircraft is flown within visual line of sight of the person flying. So, if you can't see your aircraft, it's no longer considered a model aircraft. And finally, no taking dronies on the sly of a property for a real estate agent or other non-recreational or non-hobby purpose. The purpose of the flight is for our personal enjoyment, not profit or someone else's gain. The second rule is that we follow the rules of an organization's set of safety guidelines. What does that mean? There are organizations that have rules about what is safe model aircraft flying. The thing is, the FAA hasn't gotten around to approving these organizations' rules, at least not just yet. So, the FAA has 10 rules for us to follow in the meantime. I'm going to call these items A through J. A, we fly only for recreational purposes. B, we keep our aircraft within visual line of sight of the pilot doing the flying or their visual observer. More on this visual observer person a little later. C, we don't fly our aircraft higher than 400 feet above the ground in uncontrolled airspace. We'll cover this uncontrolled or Class G airspace a little later. D, we don't fly in controlled airspace without an FAA authorization. We'll cover this a bit later too. E, we follow or comply with all airspace restrictions, including special security instructions and temporary flight restrictions. There's a worksheet with hyperlinks to the websites given in the comment section of this video, so don't worry about stopping this video to write this stuff down. You can download it later. Again, watch the video. Download the worksheet later. Don't worry about these internet addresses. F, never fly near other aircraft. G, always give way to all other aircraft. That means both manned and unmanned aircraft. You'd stop your car before hitting another car, right? Same thing with airplanes, regardless of the size. H, never fly over groups of people, public events, or stadiums full of people. I, and this one's really important, never fly near emergency response activities. And finally, J, Never fly under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Okay, so those were the 10 interim safety rules we use until the FAA gets around to approving the safety rules of the other model aircraft flying organizations. Now let's get back on track with rule number 3. Rule 3 says we must keep our aircraft within visual line of sight of us as the pilot or our visual observer. Yeah? Okay. But what does this mean? Visual line of sight means that we have an unobstructed view of our aircraft, and if we can't see it, our visual observer must be able to see it. And we have to keep the aircraft in sight using natural vision, including the use of eyeglasses or contact lenses. But that line of sight definition does not include using binoculars, telescopes, or night vision goggles. So who is this visual observer I keep talking about, and why would we want to use them? First of all, a visual observer is someone who is trained to assist you with collision avoidance and navigation awareness. They are a second set of eyes, but they are required if we put on those first-person view goggles to fly our aircraft. So those drone racers, they have visual observers to see where the drone is, and if the pilot needs to take action to avoid an aircraft they can't see while wearing those FPV goggles. Rule 4. We fly our model aircraft in a manner that does not interfere with and gives way to any manned aircraft. Yeah? What does that mean? First, it means we must see and avoid other air traffic. We can do this a number of ways. First, we select safe places to fly that are away from manned air traffic. Second, we stay away from and out of the flight path of manned aircraft. Never assume that the manned aircraft sees your model aircraft. Remember, you're looking up and can differentiate that airplane against the background of the sky. The pilot in the airplane up there is looking down, and your model aircraft is probably hidden or camouflaged by the colors and patterns on the ground, making it difficult to see. The safety of manned aircraft always comes first, even if that means you have to crash your own drone to do so. A good technique for keeping separation from other aircraft is to use the blue sky approach. You see, depth perception can be tricky when figuring out where model aircraft or drones are with respect to full-sized manned aircraft. If there's always blue sky between your airplane and the other, they are separated. As drone and model aircraft pilots, we should always maneuver so that the blue sky separation gets bigger. Here's an example. Notice the blue sky distance between the aircraft. It doesn't matter which aircraft is bigger. It doesn't matter which aircraft is closer. As long as you maneuver your aircraft so there is blue sky between the two aircraft, they'll never collide. Okay, so next is Rule 5. As mentioned a little earlier, there are different types of airspace designations or classes in the United States. For airspaces classified as B, C, D, or Surface E, we must have a flight authorization to fly. Think of this as the airplane pilot getting permission from the control tower to take off. So what does this really mean? It used to be that if you wanted to fly within 5 miles of an airport, you needed permission from the airport and the control tower first. But that's changed. Now you must know the airspace in which you intend to fly, just like any other pilot. Here's a chart that graphically describes those airspaces. On the chart, you probably noticed the Class G airspace. This airspace is usually referred to as uncontrolled airspace. In other words, you do not require authorization to fly in Class G airspace. Fortunately, most of the airspace between the ground and 400 feet across the United States is Class G. In this airspace, recreational drone flying is limited to no higher than 400 feet above the ground. But there's more. There's a new mapping system used by the FAA to help all unmanned aircraft flyers, both recreational and commercial, to see what authorization limits are out there. This mapping system is called the UAS Data Delivery System. We use the Visualize It display system to map all of this FAA data using the Graphical User Information System. To get to the display, click on the Open button. Your computer will probably take a minute or two to populate the map with the high-level data. To get down to useful information about where you intend to fly, enter an address or nearest airport identifier in the search window. Let's say you live in Cinco Ranch, Texas, and want to see if you can fly your drone without an FAA authorization. We'll plan to fly in the backyard of our house, located near the intersection of Franz Road and North Fry Road, where the red arrow is pointing. These red and blue rings on the map with the red numbers inside the squares on the map, these rings depict those Class B, C, D, and Surface E airspace areas where you must get an authorization before flying. But in this example, our location is well outside of the depicted rings. So, are we okay to fly? Maybe. But hold on, there's something else to check first. Remember those 10 safety rules I went through a few minutes ago? We still have to make sure that there are no SSIs or TFRs that prohibit us from flying. Again, don't forget to downlink the hyperlink loaded checklist. If you'd like to learn more about airspace, you can take the Airspace for Lance course. And if you want to learn about getting flight authorizations within those blue and red rings on the map, you can take the Lance for All course. Congress told the FAA in 2018 that it had to make all recreational drone flyers take a written aeronautical knowledge and safety test. Oh yeah? What does that mean? Well, for the moment, there is no written test, at least not yet. The FAA hasn't gotten around to writing it and figuring out how they're going to make us take it. But you need to know that the test is supposed to be ready sometime in 2020. When it is, we'll all have to take and pass the test. But for now, go fly. One last thing. Most model aircraft and drones will need to be registered and marked. This is sort of like the license plate on a car. Cars and trucks have registration numbers on them. Our drones have to have registration numbers too. So what does this mean? If you intend to fly your drone outside and its takeoff weight is over 0.55 pounds, that's over 250 grams, your drone must be registered, and the registration number must be clearly marked on the exterior of the aircraft. To register your drone, go to the FAA's drone zone and register under the exception for recreational flyers. Once you create an account and sign in, this is the web page you'll see. Click on the I fly under the exception for recreational flyers button and enter the aircraft registration information. The registration costs $5 and is good for 3 years. The FAA sends the registration number, something that usually starts with FA3, right to your email, so you can mark it on your aircraft. Make sure that you print up the registration and keep it with you when you fly your drone. The FAA and members of law enforcement can ask to see the paper registration. Okay, so that's it. As with anything, there are rules to fly to ensure we share fairly the national airspace with others. They aren't difficult to follow, and they are intended for both the safety of others when we fly and our safety when others fly near or around us. Finally, be a good member of the flying community by following the golden rule of recreational flying. Fly safe and respect others. I'll see you in the skies.